Trump was on the campaign trail and Big Fani came up, and there's been some contention about how to pronounce her name and what it really means and where it came from. Trump cleared that for us very quickly and easily. He explained how it works. It's Fani, just like something. Then we're going to see what's happening in Georgia. We've got State Senator Cowsert. We've got Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones. We've got a bar complaint that came out courtesy of our friend Phil Holloway, and more reaction from Rudy Giuliani and others who say maybe it's time to actually investigate Fani for perjury. Maybe it's time that the prosecutors become prosecuted. And so we start with Trump. He was out on the campaign trail, and of course it's Fani or Fani. It's really a complicated name. We've been here for a long time pronouncing it just like it sounds, Fani. And of course it's Big Fani because she's the biggest Fani in Georgia. As we know, she's the biggest Fani in America now, given the fact that she can get away with whatever the heck she wants. But Trump nailed it on the campaign trail. Here's what he said.
Cases like Fani. It's spelled Fanny like your ass, right? Fanny.
Yep, exactly. Nailed it.
But when she became DA, she decided to add a little French, a little fancy. Fani. Mr. and Mrs. Wade, which his wife did not appreciate. Can you imagine these two people trying to take down I'm a very popular president. I mean, again, I got more votes than any sitting president in history. We have these two lowlifes trying to take down a president of the United States. But equally badly, they went after 26 people. They wanted to make it 48 people. They had some senators that these guys know very well, who were ready to be indicted, and somebody stopped it. And they wanted to find out what the hell is going on in Georgia, what's going on with the elections, that it's so crazy. And they almost got indicted for that.
Yeah, and they are still being prosecuted, right? This is not over. We still have people who are asking for money to support their defense funds. Okay, well, Fani is flying around and going on cruises. We have defendants like David Schaefer who are crowdsourcing their legal defense funds on X. And it's Fani, just like your ass, okay? That's what Trump says. That's exactly right. And any naysayers on the other side should get it right. So that is what Trump said. Now, elsewhere in Georgia, we have some other reactions. So we're asking ourselves, what are the senators doing there? What's the attorney general doing there? What is the new Senate or the newly approved prosecutorial council doing, right? What's going on there? If Judge McAfee is just going to bend over backwards, he got a phone call from Kemp, or he got a phone call from Al Sharpton or someone, I don't know, who put pressure on him, or he came out with the decision, however it came out. But is there any other recourse? Is anyone else perturbed by Fani's misconduct? Here is a Georgia state senator, Cowsert, who said the following about what should happen. And, Fani is really a toxic symbol of the corrupt prosecutions that are taking place in Georgia. And so here is what he said about this when he showed up to talk to Fox News.
I think that sums it up. I mean, the judge in several places in the order pointed out the misconduct of the prosecution, the unprofessional behavior, and there he was referencing the testimony of Mr. Wade and Ms. Willis. Mendacity, of course, is untruthfulness. You're not in a good position when your trial judge trying the case has just called you out for being dishonest with the court.
Never good.
That shows his concerns, and he tried to urge her to withdraw from the case totally and take the entire DA's office out, but gave her that sort of lifeline if she wouldn't remove herself to have Mr. Wade removed from the case, and he did that.
Senator, I was reading this morning that Willis is subject of an ongoing investigation. We knew this in the state Senate and with House Republicans. And there's a new state commission with extensive powers over prosecutors like this who could also take action against her. What happens next when it comes to the Senate, when it comes to the House Republicans and this commission?
The judge laid out that he was sort of handcuffed by the lack of very specific Georgia law to remove her. So he called on the General Assembly to...
But as we saw, we think that was kind of a self-imposed box, right? He relied on that Williams case. And that Williams case, I think the judge was reading it in a bit more narrow fashion than he needed to. And he was also relying on other persuasive authority that just doesn't have much teeth to it. So he created a ruling that he wanted to. He wasn't bound. He could have gone the other way on this easily.
Enact any laws necessary to put the proper guardrails around prosecutorial misconduct. That's something that our committee will be looking into as we delve into the facts and then what laws can be changed. That prosecutorial oversight commission you're talking about can receive complaints of malfeasance in office by DAs and can take action action to either remove them from office if necessary or other punishment.
So they take
Bill,
complaints.
if you guys decide to change the law, it would ultimately not apply to this case.
Exactly. Only in the future. So we would try to restore public confidence in the integrity of our judicial system by changing the laws to make it clear what conduct is permitted and not. The judge here.
Wow. So that makes it sound like this Senate bill will not be anything that's retroactive, right? So even somebody could file a complaint, but it would only be for cases moving forward. So I guess the council doesn't have oversight over historical cases that are currently pending, only new cases. Interesting.
Her conduct was the appearance of impropriety, but not a direct conflict of interest. And what he's basically saying is this may not be illegal, but it ought to be. And that's going to be our job to pass laws to make it very clear we're not going to tolerate this behavior in Georgia in the future.
So the question is, if she moves forward on the case, what kind of credibility does the prosecution have right now?
That's why we were saying that Fani is not the worst outcome, right? The worst outcome would be a competent prosecutor takes this case. Somebody that everybody goes, dang, that person's like rock solid. Like, where was this person this whole time? They get the case back on track. They're like, they, fire everybody, get the case whipped up. We want trial next month, whatever. Fani is a lightning rod. She's going to distract all of the energy. It's going to all zigzag to her direction from now until election day. And that is exactly what they do not want on the left, which is why guys like Weissman were saying she should still go because that's how bad her misconduct was.
The people of Georgia right now in almost every poll, Trump is up 4 or 5 points. So anybody who thinks that Trump is sullied and damaged goods, they haven't told the people of Georgia.
Her credibility is shot. I mean, she loves the publicity, obviously seeking some type of higher office.
She's still there. Like this Fulton County, that guy who listened to her in church was like, she sounds great. She was attacked erroneously and she was pursuing a moral cause.
The publicity, and it's sort of kind of bitter on this case. It's now negative publicity. She has no credibility left with the courts or with potential jurors. It seems to me it will hurt her ability to obtain a conviction. If that's her true mission, then she needs to step aside and have somebody new with expertise in this subject matter come forward to handle the prosecution going forward.
No, she's the perfect one. This case is not or ever was about justice. Like, give me a break. Fani's perfect. One of the most corrupt people in the country. They're like, oh, she'll prosecute this terrible case. And so that was Senator Cowsert, who was explaining that Fani needs to step aside if they want any credibility left. Coming up, we've got Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, who says that Fani Willis is embarrassing Georgia citizens. And then we've got a bar complaint that was lobbed against Fani Willis by this guy, Steve Kramer, who our friend Phil Holloway has queued up. And we've got more reaction from Rudy Giuliani, and others. But first, let's hear from our sponsors of today's video, our friends at VNSH. This is not your average range day holster, my friends. It's designed to eliminate all those excuses holding you back from carrying daily. It's comfortable, it's discreet. In fact, you'll forget you're even wearing it. The VNSH holster fits 99% of semi-auto handguns, offering versatile carrying positions, and it conceals 2 fully loaded magazines that you can keep right here. Plus, it comes with an unconditional money-back guarantee, and today, VNSH has a serious deal for you, your family, and your friends. By using my special discount link drop down below, you can get this holster for 30% off. Plus, you can grab a second holster half off the already discounted price. Equip each family member with the most comfortable concealed carry out there. Grab this deal today so you, your family, and your friends can vanish together. And don't forget to click over using my discount link to be sure to save. Now we've got Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, who says that Fani Willis is embarrassing for citizens of Georgia. And the Lieutenant Governor, of course, is a pretty powerful position, not somebody that you want speaking out against you. And here is what he said in response to Trump's campaign speech and reaction to McAfee's decision.
On the case, what's running through your mind following this latest development from last Friday?
I wasn't surprised by the judge's ruling. He kind of split the baby. He obviously illustrated that, well, this whole thing's been a circus. Let's just be honest. The whole thing's been a circus. The president has a right to say what he says about this lady because it's all politically motivated and it's just her self-promoting herself. But obviously the judge thought there was improprieties, and that's the reason why he gave her the option to either get rid of her boyfriend or get rid of both of y'all, get off the case. And this thing is falling apart. It's unfortunate that it's still got to continue to play out, but we're going to keep pursuing what we're doing over here in the Senate with our committee. We've got a prosecutor oversight committee we just signed into law. Governor governor just signed into law that is going to have complaints on Fani. Fani, as the president says, I think he's right. I think you spell it F-A-N-I. It's spelled Fani, I believe.
Yeah, it's Fani.
But
true.
At any rate, this thing is falling apart. And what she ought to do is just recuse herself or either resign her seat. But she's not going to do that.
No, she's staying on it.
No, she won't do that. She'll ride this thing out. This is her entire career, right? She's going to milk this thing and ride it into the sunset as long as she can.
It's a mixed bag. I mean, I was not surprised, watching everything that I watch, I wasn't surprised he kind of split the baby, meaning getting rid of Wade and telling Fani that she can stay on. So it didn't surprise me at all. I do think he's been put into a bad situation. I mean, the guy just got appointed to this position a year ago, and all of a sudden he's got this terrible case that's landed in his lap.
I don't care.
Like I said, you'll have some people think it was a good ruling, some people think it's a bad ruling, but I think it's probably somewhere in there in between, and that's usually the standard for a lot of judges to do, just kind of split it down the middle. So, but either way, I think it's embarrassing for the state of Georgia. It's definitely embarrassing for Fulton County and the tax-paying citizens that they've had to spend literally tens of millions of dollars on this charade that has gone on down there. And so the sooner we can get this thing behind us, the better. But like I said, this thing's falling apart right before your very eyes, and which everybody always thought it would.
Yeah, it might just continue that way, right? Fani is on the case. It just continues to fall apart because she's incompetent. She's not a credible person, and she's not even a moral person, as we are now learning. So Phil Holloway, he has a new YouTube channel at Phil Holloway ESQ. You can look him up, but he's also on X, and he got his hands on a new Georgia bar grievance. So a bar complaint that was filed against Big Fani Willis, and this comes over from his account at Phil Holloway ESQ. And so I'll refer you over to him if you want to read everything in its entirety, but we'll hit some highlights here. Here's a little bit about what's inside, what you'll see in this bar complaint. He writes this: I have no legal experience. I am not, never have been an attorney, nor have I formally studied the law in that regard, so please accept my responsibilities and excuse my typos. Although I have information and an IT background, I'm not associated with Cellhawk. And he says, my grievance is against Fani Willis, and I'm referring to the election case. He says, I've never met Nathan or Wade, nor to the best of my knowledge, anybody else. And I've previously filed a complaint with the ethics board, and they rejected me. We disagree with that conclusion. We think that they do have jurisdiction over her, but they wouldn't do anything about it. Says, with her appearance in McAfee's court, we now believe that an ethics reprimand, while warranted, is not sufficient for Willis. She doubled down on her statements. She showed absolutely no remorse. She blamed everyone else. She was belligerent on the stand, combative, disrespectful, repeatedly tried to block testimony from relevant witnesses, appeared, in my layman's opinion, unbecoming, both of an officer of the court and a public official. You're right about that, sir. It was unbecoming. Subsequent revelations seriously call into question her veracity and her handling of such an important job. I think we need disbarment and the maximum penalty. Here's why. It says, first of all, the rules talk about fees. You have to be honest about fees. As a public official, Fani has to be honest. Her client is Georgia. And when they move money around to compensate people, they need to be honest about it. She hired Nathan Wade for an election case. Case was based on RICO, complex cases. Now, he was a solicitor who prosecutes misdemeanors, not a prosecutor, a solicitor, and a municipal court judge. So someone who does traffic tickets, not major felonies. He did not have the skill or the experience to represent this complex case. And he should have only received, when he did get appointed, $140 per hour, not $250 that he was receiving. Now, on the stand, they also brought in Governor Roy Barnes. But let's talk about fees, he says. First of all, Mr. Wade billed 24 hours work in a day, $6,000. Any manager would question that, and he had an excuse for that. But he said, at best, all of this is improbable. He had an excuse. He says, well, I billed multiple days that was the final day. Like, I bundled up all my time and I just put it all on one day. And so it was like 3 8-hour days or something. Now, unlike all of the other contract attorneys on this election case, he used block billing, and he was able to get away with that because Fani didn't care. That is where an entire day is broken down into one line item. The other attorneys used itemized billing, not block billing. How come? Maybe because Fani wanted to see what actually they were doing, but she didn't care what Wade was doing. Now, Wade's superior, DA Willis, should have questioned the invoice. Willis, right? She should have questioned him. She's the gatekeeper of the money, and she simply lets this and all of the other bills be paid without any question. There was no annotation or any other explanation by her in the record, so his total bill was $700,000. That McAfee's like, cool, man, have your money and go. See ya. You're done. Nathan Wade's like, I'm done? I don't even have to take this case to trial? $700,000 and I can just walk away? Bye. He couldn't be happier. He's doing backflips. I'll see you later. So why is this important? Because itemized billing and subsequent subsequent approval is the standard accountability of taxpayer money. We need to know what they're billing. Now, what about candor towards the tribunal? This rule prevents a lawyer from being dishonest with the tribunal, the court. In our opinion, he says, Fani made a false statement under oath. They say Fani supplied a brief to the McAfee court. That was her affidavit. She said our relationship started in 2022. Mr. Wade provided a similar story, but both of those statements were all self-serving. She was impeached by Robin Yurdi, a longtime friend. The relationship began, she said, in 2019. Now, Yurdi didn't equivocate. She said, I have no doubt at all about the timeline. She witnessed them showing public displays of affection, getting their smoochie on. The state did not challenge her testimony at all. She was reluctant to testify, and she wasn't impeached by the state. Now, we also had this other guy, Charles Middlestad, who came in, the cell phone expert, saying that Cellhawk is an instrumental part of our daily casework. Many felony cases have been solved and resulted in convictions as a result of this technology. And the cell tower shows that Wade was lying about that. He said under 10 was the amount of times that he went over to her house. No, he writes, young people call these events booty calls. Not anymore, we don't. Or I'm not a young person anymore, but, you know, thinking about my younger days. Fani calls, because Fani is just like your ass. Booty calls. One night in September, he arrived at 10:45 and left at 3:30 in the morning, returning to his own home where he lived with his wife. Mr. Wade then texted DA Willis at 4:20 in the morning, I'm home safe, baby. I made it. Don't worry. She said, text me when you get home. I love you. Adam Abate tried to impeach the cell phone tower data, partially by saying he was no expert. He later referred to the defense expert, contradicting himself, admitting he was an expert. Now, Willis cannot get away with arguing this point in the crowded metro Atlanta area. If so, any case she is prosecuted using cell phone data, if she says cell phone data is bad, there go all of her cases. And why do we need to talk about this personal relationship? This complaint continues. In normal cases, we wouldn't. It should remain private. In many cases, it's unremarkable. If she were dating a non-lawyer outside her office, no one would care. If she were dating a lawyer outside her office, no one would care. If she were an assistant DA and dated another assistant DA at the same level as her, that would be fine as long as the office rules were there, probably would dictate that she has to tell her supervisor. But none of that occurred here at all. DA Willis was in charge, and she hired her boyfriend to work directly for her as a subordinate. He had only prosecuted misdemeanor and no RICO cases, but she hired him to do this. Taxpayers paid him hundreds of thousands. His invoices contained items like 24 hours in a day. She required more detail from the other lawyers who she was not sleeping with, but she still paid him. The money then was used to go on trips, except for $400 that she said that she gave to some guy in California. There is no record of her paying him back, not a dime. Nor did she file an ethics record confirming that those gifts had been made. So a RICO case, as we know, takes a long time. And the Special Senate Committee on Investigations, they quizzed Ashley Merchant about this. We covered that one live. They said Ashley Merchant answered that Willis makes about $200,000 a year, and this was bringing a lot more money to her. No, there's a lot of people who have a lot of money in steel. Farrah Fawcett, Martha Stewart, Liana Hemsley, Macy Gray, Amanda Bynes, Winona Ryder, shoplifting from department stores. Here's another one talking about rules about fairness to opposing counsel. Now, apparently, Wade paid over $9,200 in benefits for both Wade and Fani. They don't deny this at all. Willis says she paid cash back, but we have no evidence of that other than the $400 in cash that they gave to that Napa guy. So the evidence, if this is an evidence falsifying scheme, it's intended to protect the affair, right? It's a self-serving cover-up. It's done to conceal the flow of money, and that is all part of the lie, right? And that's why this is such a dishonest thing. Previously here, we've talked about, sometimes like an attorney might lie to protect a client. Like, Your Honor, I knew he was out of the country, but I neglected to tell you because I was worried you'd say no, but he needed to go to visit his dying mom, and that's why I wasn't as honest with you. I didn't bring it to your attention, but I did know he was out of the country, and I knew I should have told you. But you're covering up for the client. You're like, he was there to go visit. His mom has cancer, Judge. Next time, I promise I'll let you know. Next time, I'll file something. I'm sorry I was busy. I got overworked, whatever. Okay, so it's like you're trying to cover up for your client. You're not the DA covering up for yourself and your lover. It's like your self-interest versus the interest of your client. Both are bad, by the way. I'm not saying one's excusable or not, but one is looked at a little bit worse because it's like self-serving. If the state bar concludes that he provided false testimony, then it stands to reason that she and her team either counseled, assisted, or acquiesced in facilitating Mr. Wade to corroborate that false testimony. The state did its best to stop Terrence Bradley from also testifying. His texts to Ashley Merchant were definitive that there was a long affair, and he told her absolutely the relationship started before 2021. Then he developed a case of amnesia on the stand. Suddenly, I don't recall. And then we had Yeager, a prosecutor, a literal government prosecutor in one county over, said that she corroborates Bradley's texts. And she also said that she heard a phone call. Wade apparently even had a garage door opener for Fani's residence. So if DA Willis lied under oath, which is perjury, that's an example of prosecutorial forensic misconduct in violation of the ethical rules. And in our opinion, the only reason she stopped the gravy train that helped fund vacations and meals was to set a trial date was for maximum harm to one of the defendants. And this is where the judge picked the wrong starting date, right? The judge started his analysis from the date of the indictment, which was in August of 2023, and said Fani's working really hard to take this case to trial quickly. Wrong judge, because Nathan Wade got appointed in 2021, and they've been indicting each other ever since then, taking a long time to move this forward. Now, prosecutors have a special duty, and you can see this complaint just continues. She sat down and talked with the authors of that book, Find Me the Votes, the case of a hard-charging Georgia prosecutor. Earlier in the case, Fani was also making statements about this. She was talking to the media, she was talking to the New York Times, and they're going through everything. She even made statements about this. She talked about harassment, and even on her webpage, she's talking about harassment. The rules say lawyers should not commit misconduct, and it's clear she's doing that as well. She was also complicit in diverting $488,000 for youth empowerment going to MacBooks. Look at that one. So $488,000 was supposed to go to the Center for Youth Empowerment and Gang Prevention. Instead, she paid for MacBooks, swag, and travel. Misappropriation of government funds. Violating the code of ethics. Also says that she didn't disclose her gifts. The document explains specifically what you're supposed to report on, and she wrote in there none. So she lied on that form as well. And so you can see this is a monstrous complaint, and they write in closing, if you want to read the full thing in detail, please go follow at Phil Holloway ESQ. He says, we believe in closing, the conflicts of interest all emanate from an affair that likely began in 2019. The fruits of that relationship were used in a scheme to take taxpayer money. The money was then diverted to a state constitutional officer, Fani, for her personal enjoyment. Now, there are 6 clear actual conflicts. The hiring of her boyfriend, the acquiescence of some questionable billing from him to her, the abuse of power against his ex-wife or soon-to-be ex-wife, the movement of taxpayer money that could have been used to help the Fulton County Jail, and the time and resources used by prosecutors to defend her action, and the damage of the reputation in Georgia. And he says, you know what? We must disbar Fani. She has made Fulton County and the state of Georgia laughingstocks in the wider United States and the world. We believe that she's flaunted the rule of law. If the state bar finds this to be true, she no longer has a place in her current position, and she cannot appear before any court. If the handbook is supposed to be meaningful, then equal treatment of the law demands that she go. I respectfully submit this grievance, seeking truth, transparency, and fiscal responsibility. Sincerely, Stephen M. Kramer, a citizen of Georgia who's tired of this garbage. And so a very nice filing. Again, if you want to read the full thing, be sure you check out Phil Holloway. He's on YouTube now. And so, of course, there are ethical rules. You saw all those rules there. Like, we take oaths and we have to adhere to those. You get in trouble a little bit, you know, it's a nightmare. But Fani can violate all of them. 1.5, 3.3, 3.4, 3.5, 3.8, and so on without any recourse. And apparently Judge McAfee is just cool letting it ride. So this is what Giuliani was saying about this, saying both Wade and Willis must go. Rudy Giuliani, of course, is charged with crimes, never lied to a judge through his teeth in court, but Fani's prosecuting him. How come Fani's not being prosecuted? Here's Rudy.
Oh, let me try a strange analogy. Suppose you and I robbed a bank. We took equal amount, and the judge said, well, one of the two of you pick which goes to jail. They both were involved in this. She lied several times. She actually admitted taking campaign funds and for using them for personal use, which the judge, showing his bias, completely ignored. I mean, I've been before many, many judges, and when somebody admits a crime like that, which is pretty startling and almost stupid to admit it, the judge says, what? You took campaign funds?
Right. She said it under oath.
Yeah.
To me, this is...
Okay, let's stop now and start an investigation.
Right.
I mean, she admitted a straight-out crime. Also, the way he finds Ward to be a liar, she lied about the same things. They were, you know, parallel to each other. So there's either not a wrongdoing here, in which case nobody should be recused, or both of them have to go. I mean, I don't get it. And she's really the prime wrongdoer. She's the public official.
Yeah, they both have to go. So, okay, that's Giuliani. And then this guy is named Paul Mauro, and he is a former inspector from New York. And he was saying the same thing, that basically there's plenty of indicia of perjury here, and maybe she should actually be prosecuted for crimes for her misconduct.
Looking at this thing with the beginnings of a criminal probe to see if, in fact, felonies were committed here.
So you think that there could be felonies here, criminality?
I do. I think that there is enough of an indicia of perjury that it has to be examined, certainly, by more than a regulatory body. The only way to really get to the bottom of this, you need a criminal investigation that has the power power to issue search warrants and subpoenas. Why?
Get
Because
those
just as a
phones.
basic thing, the first thing you're going to want to do is get a hold of those 10,000 text messages between the two parties during calendar year 2021 before she hired him in November. That comes down to over 30 text messages a day. I find it impossible to believe that there's not going to be a lot of clarity that comes out of those. There'll also be business emails. They can potentially have their devices seized, as was happened here in New York City with Eric Adams. So these are the kinds of things you do during an investigation, and maybe even build to a grand jury where you start putting people in, getting testimony, giving people immunity, and you may even get to the point where you face the decision, hey, maybe it's more advantageous to flip Wade against Willis. He's already out of the case, and so maybe that's how we're going to get some real insight.
No one's above the law. Every single prosecutor who has been violating the law and committing new felonies like perjury needs to be investigated. No one's above the law. That's their standard, not ours. So here they say that Trump has committed a bunch of crimes. Fani Willis is now still in the hot seat, and she is facing a bar grievance, and it looks like the Senate's also looking into this. Lieutenant Governor's looking into this, and we're going to see what happens there with McAfee and the appeal, and whether or not Fani makes the smart call and boots herself off the case. I don't think that's going to happen. I think she's sticking around for the long haul because she's big Fani Willis. Nobody bigger than her in Georgia. So we're going to be here continuing to cover this, my friends. Thank you for liking our channel. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for inviting a friend or family member to come over here and join us when we go live 5 days a week right here. We'd love it also if you checked out watchingthewatchers.locals.com, which is our members only community. So if you're looking for a little more content, stuff in the morning, we go live weekday mornings and on Saturdays. We'd love to have you join us and say hello to our watcher fam over there. We'll see you back here on the next one.